have we ever talked? I have a stalker.
Oh, no, we haven't mentioned that.
Every so often I get these really creepy postcards, and they have animals on them, and then they like say something really weird. They're from a company called Grandma's Dead.
That's insane.
I don't know.
If you're a teacher, there's a couple of posts that you never ever make. And one of them is you don't say anything about the bathroom. Like,
do not be candid.
Don't say.
Do not be candid.
Do not be candid about this. Do not say any policy that you have in the bathroom. It's wrong. Do not share it with anything or with anyone on the internet. Hey guys, welcome to the Type C Teachers podcast featuring me, Mikey Fresh, and my great pal, Jake Rupp. You can follow us both on TikTok, but we are here to talk today about being candid. Candid. Definition. The quality of candor. Not to be confused with the hit Disney Plus series Andor, which is fantastic, and I think you guys should all go watch it. Jake doesn't watch Star Wars, so I'm the only one in the room who gets this joke, and story of my life. In this episode, we're going to talk about honesty in the classroom, and if you're choosing to post things online as an educator, what that honesty should look like. Should you be honest, or should you just make everything up and focus on making good content? Hey, I don't know. You're going to have to listen to the episode to find out. But while you do so, while you're settling in, before you settle in and start, your drive or going up the Stairmaster, before you start doing that, make sure to hit the subscribe or the like or follow, whatever you're on. Leave a review if you're on Spotify, telling us what part you liked about the show and if you have any sort of things that you connect to. Without further ado, this is the Type C Teachers Podcast. C is for candid. Man, Some Adventures by Mr. Jake Rupp, the legend.
I collect side quests. Tomorrow, okay, maybe we should start this episode. But tomorrow, I get to call bingo.
Okay, what is that?
I'm the one up on the stage, and you put the balls in the thing, and they pop up, and then you're like, whatever, B8, 8 under the B, and then you call the winners, and I declare the game's closed, and we pay people, and yeah, I'm doing that tomorrow.
How did you get roped into that? And is that something you're really passionate about? You're just like, yes, I can't wait.
I'm honestly about to be. Yeah, I love it. So I've only done it the one time so far, but there's a bingo hall in town, and then they will allow schools and sports or clubs or whatever, they get a night. So as long as they can provide the
for the
basically
fundraiser.
I mean, obviously the bingo hall makes a ton of money, but it is a fundraiser, but they have to provide the employees. So this is for the girls soccer team. So for the most part, it's these girls soccer players, and they go around and they sell the additional sheets or they do whatever. But part of the staffing that they have to do is they need to provide a collar. And people don't want to do that, whereas I've never met a microphone I don't like. So yeah, no, I'll do it. Sign me up. And I call these numbers, and people get pressed if you go too fast or if it's not lined up straight on the screen, and it's high intensity.
So here's where I think one of the ways that you and I fundamentally differ is people present me with opportunities like that, and I'm like, I don't want to go. I don't want to do this extra thing at school, So I hear that, and I'm like, that's great for you. I don't know where you get the energy or the passion to be yeah, I really want to do this. I'll stay after school and, talk to kids or mentor them or whatever. I have my Pokemon club that meets every Wednesday. It's because I guess it's because it's something that I care about, and you care about bettering yourself in speaking environments. Maybe I just made the connection there.
Well, here's what I know. What I know is that, God, I'm going to sound 40 as hell, but I don't even care. When I was your age, I would have never said yes to these kinds of things. Never in a million years, never would have talked on a microphone, never would have filmed myself. I would have done none of those things. And then when I got to this building, this is my 8th year here, I recognized immediately that this is going to be a place where I plant my flag. I'm going to make an impact in a way that I haven't made an impact before. I changed my teaching and overhauled it, and we can talk about that at length. I think you've seen the end results, but not the process. But I started getting asked to do things. Will you moderate the student government debates? And my initial reaction would have been absolutely not. And I said yes, impulsively said yes. And I don't know where the yes came from. And I was horrified. I was so afraid to do that. And then it was fun. And then these kids were like, do you want to be in our one-act play that we wrote? Okay. Yeah, okay. And then they asked me if I would be barbecue dad at the theater grill for the end of the year, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I can do that." And I just started saying yes to like these speaking things because no one wants to talk on a microphone. This is untapped.
Yeah.
Like, it's the highest visibility. Like, and this makes it sound like I'm doing it for the clout of it all, but like, really, it's the highest visibility. It is the lowest amount of time and effort because everybody else is planning and they're doing everything. I have a mic and I talk and then I go home. And like that's it. I'm not in charge of anything else. I host stuff and I'm in things. I've announced football games, which is pretty intense. Our football team's good. Whatever. You talk on the mic and then you set it down and then you walk away. It's so worth it to start to be the face of things, and like the kids see that and they appreciate it. Like, you can go to games and they're so appreciative of that, but what if you're like the one saying their name over the big speaker? Like, that's different.
Yeah.
That's something I'm proud of. I love it, and now like I seek it out, and if they ask somebody else, I'm a little hurt.
Would you
Like,
classify
no, why didn't you
yourself
think
as like an extroverted person, or is that something you came into with this kind of yes realization?
I
Or do you believe in those
that's a
labels?
No, I absolutely do. I don't think I used to be. I think that in my 30s, I changed a lot as a person.
Yeah.
And like, I really welcomed that. At first, it was me. I don't know. There was ego a bit for a lot of things. But I think I really was willing to change in my 30s a lot. And so I started to take these things on. I would say that I am absolutely extroverted now. 100%. That's why I'm comfortable making these posts and doing things like this that terrify me. And 100%. What do you think? Like, what about you? Do you think you're introverted, or do you think you just want to go home after work? Like, those are different.
And that's kind of weird that you say you're extroverted, but you like to record yourself. A lot of the people that I know, I don't know, a lot of the people that I see online are usually introverted, or they like their close knitted people because they can control this whole situation. And I used to think of myself as an extroverted person. I think I was just lying to myself, you know.
Right.
Um, I like the attention, but I don't think, and maybe it's also just going through life events and stuff. You're just like, okay, my social battery is not what it once was for this or that reason. And I think I'm kind of in an introverted space nowadays, but it might just be
Yeah.
because I'm depressed or something.
Oh God. Well, I mean, don't laugh that off. I mean, I think there's a good reason to take a break, maybe from the. I don't know. You said it. Charge the social battery if that's how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Maybe spring break will solve it, right? Isn't that how it works? If you just adopt the countdown mentality and then just wait for a milestone, those things just get better, right? They just work themselves out.
You mean a spring break mentality is like, wait, I'm confused.
No, I mean, like, I don't. I think about that a lot of times with my students, right? Like, where they're struggling with something, whether they're feeling behind or whatever it is, and it's like, I just have to make it. Spring break's the closest, so that's my example. I just got to get to spring break. Like, I'm going to get to spring break, and then this will be better.
Yeah.
I was like, well, no, because that's just like a different day, right? Like, you haven't actually done anything. You just have less. You're just not being productive now, and that's endorsed. But eventually, that's going to have to be something that you face head on in some capacity. Like,
Right.
you gotta deal with it there. But I don't. I hear my students do it all the time.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I understand now. And I think I do have that constant countdown mentality. And I don't know if it was like a defense mechanism that I pulled up out of, not wanting. Again, I did see a therapist as I was kind of in a really dark place. But,
Right.
like, it was kind of a defense mechanism, like, oh, if I know I can make it through if I get to this or that like goal set.
Right. And I don't think there's anything that sets a person up for a bigger letdown, because then that thing ends, right? Whatever that duration ends is, and then this magic that I convinced myself of didn't actually occur. And so now here I am, but it's just later on. And now ultimately, I don't know, I see it in my students again, but like then ultimately I feel kind of worse. Like now I had more time I didn't use. And man, that doesn't fill the bucket.
Right. And like we can draw that back into your students, my students, is like, that's how the school year is built around. It's like, I'm going to get to this thing. We're going to succeed. You're going to pass on, do the next best thing. And it's obviously not working as well as it should.
I talked to another teacher today, not somebody I work with, just another teacher that I know through TikTok. And he was talking about how he's just like already starting to look towards the next year. Almost like this one's starting to feel like we've hit a point where it's lost. And it's like, okay, I mean, if you don't think if you think you've maybe lost your classroom, which is a real thing and really tough to rectify, maybe you just use this as a space to pilot some things that you want to do next year so it's not going to happen again. At least you're taking now a situation that you are not in control of and at least having this moment where it's like, I can pilot this thing. Let's see how it works. So the next year I can do it a second time with a new group of students. And maybe this remedies some of those issues in part or in entirety.
Yeah.
And that was my encouragement to him in that moment. Not, he wasn't seeking advice. It was purely unsolicited, but that's, I don't know. That's the route I'd go. I think try to do something instead of being like, you know, how many days till summer?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How have you been?
Oh, there we go. I have been wonderful. Spring break is next week and I'm excited, and I'm not excited because I'm avoiding the countdown.
Counting it down?
I am not. But in my brain, I think I am. Because of daylight saving, don't add an S. Because of daylight saving, I think my body wants to sleep more, and it's messing with my days.
Oh, that was so
I woke
good
up today
for spring break this
week. Go ahead.
So nice.
Oh, I would give anything for that to be aligned, and like teachers in my district, I think would really take that as just a compliment. Like, thanks for thinking of us. But today, because we have block, right? So every kid I see today, I can say, have a good spring break, because I'm not going to see them tomorrow. And at some point over the course of today, I convinced myself it was Friday. Like it was fully Friday. And my daughters pointed out then at the end, like, Dad, it's Thursday. Like you have a whole nother day. And I was like, man, okay. I was like packing my stuff up and like picking my room up so I had something nice to come back to. It was like, oh my God, I was wrong. Did you do anything for spring break at least?
No, I chilled out. And for better or for worse, I don't know, because like I just stay in my room.
Okay.
I think I'm developing bad habits that I need to work on. I helped out with my parents. They live like down the street. And yeah, I didn't do much. I returned an Amazon package.
Ooh, okay.
What an adventure. Yes. They say it's the odyssey of I mean, Amazonian women. It's like so many connections.
Oh yeah, the last Dragonians for sure, 100%. And look, I think productivity is generally overrated, because there's a lot of times where I wish I didn't need to be productive, but when you have, you know, 2 kids and all sorts of stuff to do that kind of orbits that, not like my kids are super demanding or anything, but there's something too where we've been sitting at home for an entire day, and then it's the next one. It's like, we gotta go do something. Like, man, I gotta go for a run, and then maybe I'll take you guys to the pool or whatever. We gotta get moving, because that makes kids bonkers, and my kids are great, but damn, you can't, that sort of inactivity is brutal. Yeah, so I mean, that's basically what I've been up to. We're starting to get our schedules for next year and looking at these classes that we're going to be teaching, and my schedule is shifting in those ways, but that hasn't been pinned down. And we haven't had any turnover at my school, so now teachers that have been teaching the same thing for a long time are interested in teaching other things, which is completely fair. But there's a finite number of classes, so if you want to do something else, then somebody else has to do something else also, and then that sort of conversation, I think, just becomes uncomfortable, right? Like, well, why does somebody else get it? Well, why did you already have it? And those are all, every stance is fair. It just makes the conversations like, man, this is normally a really exciting time, but our faculty, I mean, for the better of it, has been the same. It's the same. So those have been kind of interesting conversations, but I get to teach a college communications class.
All right. Is that the public speaking class that you mentioned?
Public speaking.
Okay, gotcha.
Public speaking. Yep. I had my orientation yesterday.
Sound nice.
Exactly. Yes, I had my orientation yesterday, and that is going to happen. And so spring break, one of the things I have to do is write a syllabus and create a course. Oh, cool. And yeah, get that bad boy approved. And then I am a University of Colorado professor for a second class.
Dang. Professor Rupp. We're rebranding.
Yeah, but don't say, oh my God, could you imagine? Yeah, no, I don't. I'm a high school English teacher who also happens to allow kids to get some credit. There is no way I couldn't teach college. Absolutely not.
Why? I mean, you teach a college class. Why would you say you can't teach college? I feel like there's more
I,
buy-in in college. Like students are more
I
willing to. I
so hear me
could
so
be
hear me
wrong.
out. So I think there's a level where that's true, and it's not the level that I am at. I teach courses. Every course I teach, and I've worked my way into this very deliberately. Every course I teach is a class the kids chose to take. So I teach ninth grade honors, or I teach AP Lang, or I teach young adult novel. Those classes are not things that kids have to take, right?
Okay.
They chose to take honors or AP or whatever. So when they're in my college classes at a high school level, they absolutely chose to be there. Those same classes, if I'm teaching them at an actual college, are prerequisites. Now they're ones that students have to take. And
Gotcha.
that changes everything. People talk about maybe not wanting to teach younger kids or they want to teach older ones or whatever. I don't see it that way. If we're going to create the binary, it's the classes they're signing up for versus the ones they're forced into, and that is the thing that changes the entire perception and the things that you can do and the way that you can speak to them. So in my situation, keep me in a high school. I don't want to. No, no, no.
That's interesting. That's interesting, especially
Mm-hmm.
mentioning elementary, because it's like
Mm-hmm.
they almost have an extra responsibility. In the younger grades in general, anything that's prerequisite is like you have an extra responsibility to synthesize a buy-in for the kids. And a lot of people go about like the countdown idea of like, hey, you got to checklist all these things off, get to this day, and then you get to move on to the next thing. And that's how they get them to buy into that idea. Uh, you're lucky.
Well, I got it. It's been a very deliberate, and this is kind of what I'm talking about with these meetings that I'm also having, right? It's been whenever there is an opening for these things, I'm launching my way into them. And so I'm going to do those things. I'd read young adult novels my whole life. I'd never taught a
Mhm.
class in it. Yeah, sure, sign me up. I'll figure it out. Like that sounds great because the kids chose to be there. Even I teach SAT prep. I've never taught SAT prep, but they chose to be there, so I can do that. And like that is such a difference maker. And I've taught on level and I've done it. I
Yeah.
mean, but you just have to, it's a completely different approach because of that one singular element. That's massive. And so I don't know, maybe when I see teachers, or maybe there's teachers that are potentially listening to this, one of our 15 listeners, hope maybe that's the thing that you want to consider pursuing. Like that was my hard part with middle school, the 1 year I taught it. Nobody chose to be there.
Yeah.
So that's way tougher, and I'm not gonna. I can't incentivize with
What are you
grades.
trying to
Like that's
say
always
against
felt
middle school
hollow.
teachers?
That it's hard. That it's so much harder. It is so much harder, and I think that's one of the reasons why that people don't articulate. Is like they didn't choose to be there. They have to.
I think flipping it, I'm starting to think about like translating this to content creation as well.
Mhm.
Like I've heard it said that there's two kinds of content, aside from like memeing and brain rot. It's like entertainment and there's education. And like sometimes you can combine them, but they usually lean towards one or the other. And it's like the reason, and what I'm thinking of is whenever I try to give, or in the past when I've tried to make my videos more education oriented, because now I'm kind of strictly in entertainment, and you're probably more in the education type with the leaning towards
Mhm.
like the way you present it is entertaining, but it's like that idea of am I forcing my audience to be here, or is this something that they are pulling, like are they like investing themselves into it, or can I convince them to be interested in this using your rhetorical skills, and
There, look, that makes a big difference,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's how you package it. If people aren't listening, then you're not. Then what you're doing doesn't exist.
Hmm.
Right? Like, especially like if it requires an audience, then what you're doing doesn't exist. That's what I mean. People can do things for themselves. They're valuable. But if you're trying to teach something and they're not engaged, you're speaking. And that makes a ton of sense on the content creation side too. This is going to be the most outrageous poll, but like, hear me out. Have you ever seen the bowling clip of the guy who wins and he throws the most perfect strike I've ever seen in his life? His last name's Weber. I swear to God, I wish I could think of his first name.
Feel free to look him up. Like, yeah, who are you? I am.
Who do you think you are? I am.
Think you are. Yeah. I am.
So that guy has this line, and I've read it in an interview with him, and he says outright, "I don't want anybody to turn the TV when I'm on it."
Oh.
Like that's his line. I don't want anybody to turn the channel while I'm on TV. And like, so he's adopted sort of this personality, which I think is just a caricature of himself. Like, I think it's authentic. I think it's just a little bit bigger when there's cameras on, because bowling tournaments are like a completely anonymous sort of thing until you get to the championship and ESPN shows up, and then it's the spectacle, right? And so, yeah, I don't want anybody to turn the channel when I'm on TV. And that I've taken into teaching a little bit, I'm not going to lie, like, or into content creation or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of, I don't know if you misspoke with saying you put it into your teaching, but I feel
no, I did. I meant that too.
Yeah. I hear that and I'm like, man, I mean, that's the way you got to make it work is you give them a reason not to change the channel. You give them a reason not to be like, hey, I'm done with this class. You know, I want to switch out. Or you can be like, you can torture them and make them want to get out of your class if you don't like them.
Well, and some of that has to do with just how long you talk. Like, I'm going to turn it even if I'm interested, if I've just been watching enough of it. Like that, then I'm good. And that's honestly my struggle with the creation of a podcast, because I don't listen to these. And I'm like, people are really they'll like put this in their ear and they will stick around for the entirety of this. Blows my mind. So now I'm like navigating that because I don't have any familiarity with that audience at all. I have no natural connection to that. So that's the thing I'm working on. I'm excited for all the things that we have to talk about today. I like the idea of calling ourselves Type C teachers and having episode themes that revolve around that idea of the letter C, because I see all of these posts about Type A and Type B. And man, both of those seem like really radical sides of a spectrum. And I like the idea that C can exist, and that's the gray qualified area that I want to like park myself into. I don't know. I would say my C is closer to B than A, but I don't know. To act like I'm completely unorganized would be outrageous too.
Yeah. It adds a nice like aspect of a spectrum into what teaching can be. It's not this or that. It's like, hey, we exist somewhere in the middle, and this is what it looks like. Both in education.
There's so many ways to be successful.
Yeah.
So many ways to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Plus, I'm a sucker for some metaphors. USB is like, or USB-C is like the new type of, plug-in. And it's like, we're new, we're cool.
That's exactly it, because that's the newest letter, and I don't know that I'm comfortable with Type D podcast, so we're just going to go ahead and ground ourselves right here, and that is a place that I am comfortable.
I'm going to make we're going to have a after hours podcast where we just like we put on a Patreon. Yeah.
On the Patreon, I don't have a shirt.
Dirty.
God, can you imagine? Oh no. There's an audience.
There's an audience. We know that from your DMs. Which, again, like I feel as long as I've been on it, and I've been on TikTok for years, I've never gotten thirsty DMs. And just like to hear that they actually exist and they're not like something like one of those things that influencers lie about to bring up on like a TikTok chat or like a video to, build up awestruck and be like, oh guys, you'll never believe what this person sent me. I'm like, that doesn't actually happen.
Look, today's episode, the theme is Type C teachers, and the C is for candid. We stole the whole branding from Lil Wayne because in so many of his songs, it's Wheezy F, baby, and the F is for phenomenal, or whatever it is. The F ain't for fail. It's perfect. In the spirit of candid, like the candidness of it, the amount of those DMs that I get is over the top. The comments are wild, and then they get filtered out, and then you see them and you're looking at them and it's like, man, you there are some really outgoing, predominantly men. There are some really outgoing men on TikTok that are willing to express their gratitude for me making content and let me know that. And honestly, I appreciate, we're being candid, I appreciate the support. Thank you. That is very kind.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you so
that,
much. It's nice to be encouraged. It's not
yeah,
reciprocated, but thank you.
they're a lot better. Oh, well, I mean, have we ever talked? I have a stalker.
Oh no, we haven't
I don't,
mentioned
I
that.
don't, I don't talk about them on TikTok, and I don't know, maybe they'll follow here and get the attention they so desire. But every so often, I get these really creepy postcards, and they have animals on them, and then they like say something really weird. They're from a company called Grandma's Dead, and like I looked it up, and like that's a legitimate company that makes these weird postcards and like ways to like be anti-celebratory about things. So I get those. I think my wife threw them away because they weirded her out, but I was saving them in case we needed evidence. And there's like just a little stick figure, and it's holding like a balloon that's shaped like a heart all the time. And then like a lot of times maybe the heart is like crossed off or whatever, and then it just says like hi out of their mouth, and they're always postmarked from a different place in the country.
Do you think it's like a former student or something trying to just like? That's insane.
I don't know. I've got over a half dozen of them.
That's so
in the last couple of months.
weird. Oh my god. Yeah. If you don't want to, we can be as candid as we want. If you don't want this to be in it and be like acknowledging that.
But I think that's part of it.
Crazy.
Like, I am the most average human being. Okay, I'm the most normal looking person. My content is so unaggressive. Like, I'm a high school English teacher. I'm a father. I've been married for almost 20 years. Like, I am not of interest in any way that is unique necessarily to anybody else. And so to get this sort of attention, like we talked about in the DMs or via postcards or whatever, is crazy as hell to me. Like, I think the only reason it doesn't weird me out more is because part of me just sort of doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
Like it's all some kind of elaborate prank. Like, there's no way that these people are looking at me and they're like, you are attractive enough that I'm going to send you multiple messages in regards to that. Like, I just don't buy it. I feel like they're just trying to engage with me. So there's a screenshot that like can go somewhere, but I don't know, man. I don't.
So bizarre.
I'm not being humble, and I'm not being low self-esteem. I am being in disbelief.
Yeah.
Period.
Oh my god. And
the beauty of us not knowing each other is we get to tell each other these kinds of stories for the first time.
yeah, I mean I've never had a stalker situation. Man, I don't even know where to begin with that whole situation.
It is a different planet. But then for all of those, right, I get multitudes more that are saying really nice things. Things that not like in an appearance way. Nice things about teaching, or students that I haven't talked to in a long time, and you get to hear how they're doing, or that like somebody's kid had a teacher like me, or like whatever it was, and they're so damn nice that I honestly push out all like the weirdness, which is in a very, very serious minority, like compared to the nice things. And it's like, I don't know, then you forget about the weird stuff until you say it out loud really for the first time to someone that's not your wife, and it's like, oh no, that is creepy as hell.
Yeah, I mean I've had like people call into my school. I made like, if you're a teacher, there's a couple of posts that you never ever make, and one of them is you don't say anything about the bathroom. Like,
do not be candid.
Don't say. Do not be candid. Do not be candid about this. Do not say any policy that you have in the bathroom. It's wrong. Do not share it with anything or with anyone on the internet. If you say, I let all my students go as much as they want, I don't care, people are gonna call your school and like threaten you. If you say,
really, I've never made that post. I don't know.
Don't
I have an adjacent story, but not a straight on the avenue one. Oh my god!
Don't do it ever. It will garner views. Like, it's because everyone has some sort of projected experience that they automatically assign with you, and even whatever the tone, whatever the context, they will voice their opinion, and then those comments off of the comments, like the threads will build, and hundreds of thousands will build up, and then someone will be like, oh, I know this guy, he goes to this school. And that's why also you got to Like, I don't know if you've done this in your TikTok settings. Like, I think it's under security, but you block out, like,
Mhm.
you can customize words that can't be seen in your comments. Every school I've worked at, I put in the school name so that
Oh,
automatically they show up hidden. They will be censored. It's
I I have not ever done that,
yeah,
and
don't
I
do it.
I don't know. I think it's because I wear so much stuff with my school name on it, and like
Oh yeah,
it's like so pronounced even in the background that like at this point I think it's too late. Like maybe that would have been a good idea,
yeah.
but I don't think I can go through and clear that all out. You made a so what is the fallout? I've never had anybody call my school to complain or take issue with the content that I make on the internet, which, by the way, would be completely preposterous because I have nothing to defend. I'm really thoughtful about what I post, and
Yeah.
clearly so are you. So, what does the fallout of that look like? Like, what's the follow up?
It's
That I can't imagine sitting in an office and having my principal be like, "So you made this?"
exact. No,
Like that's
well, he
wild.
doesn't know. It's like that. It's like, hey, I got this email. It said someone was asking me to fire you. Can you tell me what that's about? And like me and my last principal, who this happened with, it was like we were cool, and
Right.
he knew me. He knew my classroom. He knew that I wasn't like holding kids against their will and making them pee in the corner and whatnot. And so there's that aspect, but there's also one where I got not doxxed, but harassed by libs of TikTok, and then through the grapevine, like someone figures it out, and it was a pretty conservative area, so there were bound to be people who followed libs of TikTok, and same deal. And he was like, "Don't worry, I got you." Like that one was about like respecting kids' pronouns, like whatever. It was just like this basic thing, hardly like 5 words spoken in it.
Right.
uh,
I had a student get libs of TikTok too.
Really,
And
that's
yeah, and they
insane.
had to deal with that. And that was one. It was a post that ended up being a really like I know that's a massive platform, right? And there's a
Yeah.
lot of engagement that it gets. But I think this one, not I think this one was a particularly engaged with post, and it was like that is man, that's a kind of heat that I'm not interested in at all. I made one post and it blew up. I think it did 1 million. I made one about the idea of like, we do not have kitty litter in our classrooms. Like, I don't have a litter box. That is not a real thing. If it was a real thing, there would be a trillion pictures of it on the internet. It would be so highly documented. And you know why it'd be documented? Because it'd be weird as hell. And it should be documented because that is bizarre. And so it's with that then that I made this post like the only kitty litter I have is in my emergency bucket that we have that has a toilet seat on the top in case there's some kind of like danger and violence where we are on lockdown for a substantial amount of time.
Hmm.
And I made that post because a guy at a restaurant was like, I don't know how you teach right now with that kitty litter. And I was like, that's not true. He's like, no, I heard it was.
My mom said it was, and I'm not to put my mom under the bus, but I'm just like,
No.
Mom, I work down the road from you. It's not happening.
Right. The C is for candid. We do not have kitty litter in our classrooms for any reason other than the idea that students might be in there for a significant amount of time due to other sets of problems that maybe will be discussed on a later episode. But I swear to God that, Jesus.
Well,
I don't,
and we
I don't have
know,
that conversation in me. That's so outrageous.
and
I'm like
yeah,
firing myself up and no one even said it. We're talking to each other, but like I'm not hypothesizing. I'm manufacturing this conversation, this argument in my head. Like
but
so
it's a real
dumb.
conversation. I mean, it doesn't take
Oh
much
yeah.
imaginative effort to imagine the conversation because it's on Joe Rogan.
What? Yes, and that was what my comments kept saying. And again, I don't listen to podcasts, so I know Joe Rogan. I'm not an idiot, but I don't know anything about what's going on there, the types of conversations. I know the friends of mine that listen to it, and the way that it seems like their idea. Sometimes they say things in a way that reminds me of when students turn in paper in their Chat GPT. Like I know your
Oh,
voice,
yeah.
and this doesn't match that. And so as a result, like I recognize that like you got that idea from somebody. That's not how you articulate.
Hmm. I was gonna say I know Joe Rogan, and I am an idiot. So
Okay. Well, there you
I'm
go.
just kidding. Uh, Speaking of being candid, let's move on to this topic. And
Okay.
there's like a discussion to be had here. Like, should we even mention it? Because of like, I try to be on the side of teachers as much as possible, but it's like this is just like a clear example of this is a limit to your candidness. This is a limit to how much you're supposed to share with people online or even people in your workspaces. Like this substitute less tip.
Mhm.
And you said you saw some of his videos, right?
I did. When you put this as an idea for us to talk about, I went through and I speed ran them. I watched all the ones. His account's super interesting, by the way.
It's
But I went
super
through
interesting.
yeah, like I'm way into that. But he made, yeah, I went through and watched the ones that were like, he was kind enough to put them in parts.
Now, before we get started with this conversation, I think it's important that we watch the actual video that Les Tip posted. Before we get an idea, before we posit our own opinions, I think it's important for you, the viewer or listener, to view or listen exactly what we're talking about, at least the first video. So here it is.
Hey, I'm subbing for a U.S. history class. The teacher printed out an assignment for today. Are you a liberal or conservative checklist? Where they list a bunch of ideas on both sides of an issue. I think not only is that stupid because they're putting human rights on the same level as regular opinions. But so, for example, healthcare. He labeled liberal healthcare as free healthcare provided by the government. That means everyone will get the same poor quality healthcare. And the conservative side, support universal government supervised healthcare. There are a million people who can't afford health insurance. The way that a lot of these are worded is that it's not only very vehemently leaning towards the right side of the political spectrum, it labels things that are human rights issues as opinions. And because of that, there are so many kids that brought in all conservative side. And listening to their reasoning, it's like, I don't like gay people, or gay people think I'm homophobic because I don't want them to get married. Dog, duh, that's what makes you homophobic. Let me read one for you. In your opinion, why is same-sex marriage so important? Same-sex marriage because everyone has to worry about everyone but themselves. I don't think they should get married. Dog, that is you worrying about other people. What is something you agree with and disagree with? I agree with the death penalty. I don't agree with taxes and same-sex marriage. These are the people that are going to be entering the political space soon. It pisses me off so bad that not only does this teacher not care, it's evident that he pulled this from a website and then wrote in a few of his own things. But this kind of rhetoric is the reason that people like me or my siblings or my friends are probably not going to be able to get married soon, and in some states aren't considered a protected class of people. Look, I'm just saying that as a prospective parent or a current parent, I would be a little bit more worried about what my child was learning in school.
Right. So I found the ones that were labeled appropriately, and I caught up on the lore of Les Tip and his objections to the things that he was seeing in this classroom that he was substituting in.
And you know what? They're valid things to talk about, but I think there's a way to present this where you're not going to get repercussions to the point of this guy, he lost his job, right? He still has the video posted, by the way, which is
100%. And look, so you know this and I know this, but what I recognize when I'm looking at those posts, right? Because you put it on here, so I'm looking at this guy, and that post, I don't even think hit 500,000.
Yeah, I think
right?
it was at,
and so
I
when we
pulled up, it had 300,000 or something.
Okay, and so so he's on there and he's talking about this post blew up and this was super massive, and it's like, man, it really kind of didn't though. Like that is a popular video, yes, 100%. And when you're not somebody who makes content regularly and doesn't see those sorts of numbers, it's mind-blowing. You think about it all the time. You feel like somebody's looking at you all of the time. Like you have an obligation to people to then continue telling that story and updating them. Like you're not just one of a million scrolls they made that day, which you truly, honestly are. That doesn't mean that what he's talking about isn't important, but it does mean that maybe it feels bigger than it is because it feels like 300,000 people are looking at you. And that feels like a more active choice on the part of the people watching than it really is. So when he then is making that original post, and that's the one that I think is so interesting and dynamic, it was this. If for those of you that haven't seen it, he was substituting a class, and it was a questionnaire. And it created the binary, are you liberal or conservative? And you pick one of the options based on the way that pros or cons are presented in those. So the guy makes he makes a really valuable point where all of these things were weighted equally. So some of them were just preference and general ideas, whereas some of them had to do with literal human rights or amendments or the important part is that in a scale of severity, no argument, I'm saying this passionlessly, these things are of different importance completely and entirely different, but they're each worth a point. And then the phrasing of them was so clearly leading, so wildly leaning. It would be the same thing as if I was all right, plastic straws, right? Do you hate turtles or would you prefer a plastic straw? And it's well, I don't hate turtles. Okay, so Like I don't hate turtles more than I want a plastic straw, so I'm going to pick that side. Like it was like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like this, it was aggressive. So when I don't know what when you saw that, what was your initial reaction to that, and how deep in the saga was it at that point?
Well, I saw the very first video, probably when he just had like 70,000 views or something crazy. And first of all, I'm like, posting in your classroom is always a risk, and
Yes.
like you gotta weigh that. No matter if it's just like a get ready with me outfit of the day, I'm doing some silly dance and saying some clever caption, or if I'm like teaching someone or if I'm educating someone, and he is posting in someone's classroom and he's criticizing someone who's like, it's not his classroom. He's criticizing them. There's an argument to be made that it's important to bring to the center, but all of these 300,000 people, they're not going to like legislate this change. They're not going to, advocate for change. They're just going to get this guy more attention for a day, or he's been going on like live every night, which I see.
Oh,
like,
really?
Kind of like pulling
Okay.
from the attention that he has, and he's been retelling the story. Which, I mean, marketing wise, probably a good idea to make some money. Not gonna lie.
Yes.
But like, okay, so when I used to teach English learners, right? So a lot of my kids came from Central America. I had a couple come from Asia, and I would I would get their work and bring it to class, and if we'd had extra time, we'd work on it from the early classes. And without fail, they'd have a social studies teacher who is a coach, and he's maybe preoccupied, or he doesn't have the full capacity however you want to phrase this best.
There's a stereotype. Those teachers absolutely exist. I believe. I'm going to defend them for 2 seconds,
Yeah.
but like I believe that part of the reason that they got into education had to do with education that isn't primarily in their classroom.
Right.
And so, if their classroom can become a vessel by which they do the job that they really did sign up for, that does not support them because it's not financially viable to just coach high school, and I say just like the time commitment's insane. Yeah, man. Like they end up in a classroom and there's a textbook, and maybe it's not always the most I mean, some of those guys crush it. I know for a fact some of those guys crush it, but I know the type of guy that you're talking about too.
Yeah.
So anyway,
either way, like fitting people in those stereotype is dangerous regardless. But like I would have these English learners who would bring this low effort, like similar to this less tips work that's very biased, or it has a leaning one way, or it doesn't give the complete story. And I didn't make posts about them because I knew what would be a better idea is to go talk to the teacher, or leave a note and be like, hey, can we like reword this? Can we simplify this? My kid has no idea who George Washington is. Can we maybe build a, biography, like a short little thing about him, and explain why he's important instead of just failing him because he doesn't know this thing? It didn't get me hundreds of thousands of views, but I did my job,
I cannot look. If it came down to like, are you going to be Mr. Rupp on the internet, or are you going to be Mr. Rupp in the classroom? I would just never have a cell phone again. Like it's an easy choice to me. I love the internet. I love the work that I do on it. I love being able to communicate about the positivity, and hopefully people see that like it's not a wasteland within education. There are great things happening, and those great things aren't hard to find, right? And so it's with that then that I would chuck this shit out the window so I could teach.
Yeah.
Always, 100% of the time. And so I'm never going to do that to the people that I work with, like ever. Even earlier in this, when I'm talking about how these meetings we're having are difficult, like we're all educated. I care about those people, those real people, even if I tend to disagree with them in a certain space at a certain time. You think I'm going to be like, man, you should have heard what happened at this thing.
Yeah.
No, because they are real. They're real, and they're working hard, and we all want what's best for kids. Like,
yeah. Or even if you know that they're not, there's making a video is not going to do much to correct that process. Like take it to your boss, your administration, be like, hey, I see this thing. The kids are responding to it in a way that is not to their benefit. There are so many more resources that they could use. This looks like you should have a discussion with this person.
And and there's like, can you imagine if you taught across the hall from somebody, right? Or like you're in the floor above them and you're scrolling TikTok and you're like, you won't believe this guy that I work with. And then they're talking about you and it's the first you've ever heard of it. Insane. That is insane. One of the things that I'm teaching it right now. It's how to frame research around the arguments that you're going to make. It's called They Say, I Say. I didn't make it up. You can download the PDF like it's just on the internet. But they say is the idea that you take research and you present it in such a way that if you handed it to the person that made that argument or collected that data, they'd say, yes, that's what I said. Mm-hmm. Right. And so like that's where that's how you check for bias. Would that author agree with this assessment of the thing that they made? So it's with that our man Les Tips, I swear it's on like the second or third one. He opens with, well, I wanted to get the scoop. So I went and talked to other teachers and here is what they said. And it's like, you're blowing up. Did you tell them you were going to make this? Like oh my God. Like again, maybe the thing that you're saying is correct, we're not talking about that. Like, you're really publicizing other people now also, instead of this initial thing, which honestly is maybe could be framed better, but is something that is worthy of some consideration and a discussion about how we present biases in class. Because all I can think while watching that video today is I almost want to make something like that. Right. And then see that like how I can control outcomes and how phrasing can control outcomes. And that being an invaluable lesson in rhetoric. Like looking at that, man, like I paused on one of them where you could look at it and the way that things were phrased, you would have to be out of your mind to pick one of the options because it's misrepresenting the original, like the actual argument. It's cherry picking. It's a straw man. Like you can't just do stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're not teaching that though, with the survey, man, you're going to get a bunch of students that end up saying the same thing because there's right answers based on the way you phrased it, not in the way that the actual issue points to, or else it wouldn't be arguable.
Yeah.
It's out of control.
Out of control.
And so again, that poor guy, I'm interested to see where it goes. I've only given each of these videos a single watch.
Bro needs to do a makeup get ready with me with his like death metal.
He's cool.
Yeah. I'm like, this person
his other content
should be like, in a classroom in a sense, because it's like you represent a group of people who I know are not going to who are not going to be passionate about coming to school every day, but then they see someone who looks like you and like, hell yeah, like you belong here.
You rule.
Yeah.
Like, again, the way that he's passionate about stuff, like just in the ones I kind of scrolled through to get to the ones that we were going to talk about, like, man, you just seem like a genuinely awesome human being. And I'm not saying with the exception of these videos, I think these videos were trying to do something that is an important conversation to have.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a level of maybe just like potential nuance that comes from recognizing the way that those things can just be taken and like ran with in a way that almost obliterates your original intent. And like that sucks because the conversation's important, but then the takeaway just gets, I don't know, perverted.
Speaking of,
here, hold on. Before we transition, we're going to cut this out. I need to use the restroom.
Oh yeah, you're good. You're good. I was trying my best to make a little segue there.
I am not providing commentary on the stance that Les Tip is taking. That's not the thing that interests me so much about these. Of course, I have opinions about it, but that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's about the presentation of information in a public space and how those choices, beyond just the logic of the thing that you are saying, but the optics of it, can force the intent to be so misinterpreted or so easily misconstrued. Because he could have made a hell of an argument, and all of that then gets immediately dismissed when it becomes, dude, it's not even your classroom. Like,
I think there's also, like, with this conversation, I think there's also space to lie. And I think a lot of people who make content or getting started making content don't know that. I can, instead of being like, hey, this is this guy's thing, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is in. He can be like, hey guys, I was scrolling through Teachers Pay Teachers because I have to substitute, and I found this
Yes.
PDF, and guys, look at this. This is insane that such and such person is making. That would probably get this person's account to, be one starred into oblivion or whatever. But maybe it should be, and that doesn't have any repercussions on his own career as he wants to be an educator. It doesn't have it still provides space to have conversations with the teacher who is maybe presenting a piece of material that they shouldn't be. I think when this conversation
What a
about
good
candidness,
point. That's such a good point.
it's good to lie.
Yes. Yes.
Nothing on here is real.
Right. And I don't know that I've ever, oh God, this is going to make me sound, I don't know that I've ever thought to lie. And I'm not handing out life lessons for my cloud of morality, but that's really the way to go about it, is like that. You made that sound so easy. That 100% should have been it. Like that I found this, don't even say the copy machine, because then you're isolating a building and you're going to have the same thing. Mm-hmm. But like there was this thing on Teachers Pay Teachers, and I'm not trying to blow them up, but we need to have a conversation about how we're presenting arguments and information. Yeah. Exactly. My God, that's so smart. Yes. And then the conversation can happen, which is an important one, without people getting distracted. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's distracting. I'm not blaming the viewing audience. It is distracting. I was distracted. Like, that's what we're talking about. So, oh my God, what a great call. And so, okay, speaking of distract.
Yeah.
I mean, no, go ahead.
It doesn't even get into the conversation of like having a professional page online where you're also associated with your classroom. I don't even necessarily care about that. I prefer mine to be like kind of polished and clean, because I think it kind of goes best. It kind of solidifies my content together. I think it's the best way to kind of tell my story through my page. But I don't even think that's part of the conversation, but it could be used against you if you get in trouble, which is always what you want to be mindful of. When you're making content.
Absolutely. Even then, like, part of me, if you look at my videos and you're in my classroom, if you zoom in, you can't necessarily tell the titles of them, right? Because like, that's not necessarily like, I'm talking up here, and this is the thing that's in my room. Like, if I want to talk about books, I'll talk about books. Like that'll be the subject of it. But ultimately, I agree. It matches my content. I'm an English teacher. I operate in a fever dream of an English teacher's classroom. So that's going to be the thing that's going to be my backdrop primarily when I am talking about education. It makes a ton of sense to me. Okay. The thing I want to talk about is the idea of the 20-year-old senior.
The 20-year-old senior. He showed up on my page too. I'm surprised I forgot about it.
Oh, I have taught students that are pushing 20. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever had any actual 20-year-olds. Yeah. I have some seniors that have recently turned 19 in the past. Like, that's something that honestly I wouldn't even really bat an eye at. Like, that's not infrequent necessarily. But like, the idea of somebody, most of those students have gone through something that stunted their ability to be able to graduate in what we would consider to traditionally be on time. And so the idea, again, and that's why I can't speak on this person specifically, unless that content is like somehow making fun of what they're doing or not taking it with maybe a level of seriousness, or like, I don't know, but like, unless the content is pointing towards something that is actually worthy of criticism, the simple act of being somebody continuing to pursue their education does not warrant criticism to me. My current school doesn't really do this. I know they used to, but my previous schools absolutely did. Where like, if you didn't earn credit for a semester of English 9, you would take it again as a 10th grader.
Right.
And then you'd take it again as an 11th grader. And there were multiple students that would have like 4 math classes because they were taking them at every level, just spending all day in math because they hadn't earned credit or hadn't done summer school.
That's how my last school was, yeah.
And so I'm looking at that, and I get it, right? Like, you didn't pass, so you should retake the class in order to try and pass it. But also, aren't we being a little bit disingenuous about the importance of passing it if the students are also taking the next level up already? Like, I don't know. And so my point is, I hope that there are more systems that are being put in place for those students that aren't earning credit, because oftentimes students retaking it end up being something that, like, if I'm teaching all ninth graders and there's an 18-year-old in that classroom, that in and of itself is something that really does change something about the environment of that class. Right. Like, and so I what I'm saying is, I don't want to talk about the problems, but I can propose solutions. My school happens to offer something called unit recovery, and I teach it, by the way. It's one of the things, and that's the one where, like, so if a student is close to earning credit for whatever this semester is of 9th or 10th grade English, then a student can take this unit recovery course because they exhibited most of the skills. Like, they had it. There might have been an issue with timeliness or a particular unit, or something happened in their life, right? Like, let's not call this a failure of anything, but they didn't earn the credit. So they take this class with me. It's over the course of 10 blocks, and our blocks are an hour and a half, so 10 blocks is about 4 weeks. And they work through a unit, and I instructed, but they've worked through a unit that covers the skills of that semester, like, with less than, because I only have 10 blocks, right? And a semester would be 45 blocks. So within that 10, I'm covering a majority of these skills, and then they're demonstrating them, so I can go through and say, while they might have been deficient in terms of scores initially, we can now look at this body of work, because now they took a 45 block class, but they did it over 55 blocks essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And they have earned credit. They have demonstrated the type of work and understanding that would have earned them credit initially. It just took them an extra 10 blocks. So that is how then we are going to deal with that. And again, we still have, like, online e-credit. There's still summer school to take e-credit. Like, those things exist too. But I don't know. I like that idea. The idea of a 20-year-old in high school, like, I have to assume something happened in their life where there was a gap there. And if not, then that's a different conversation. I don't know what to say. There's a lot of different routes that could get you there. But
yeah, even if there wasn't something that happened there, it's still, like, a cool story to see.
Well, yeah, right? Like, I don't know. That's
like, take ownership of it. Yeah.
If somebody's posting, if they're willing to post about that, there's people out there that are struggling to get diplomas, and they see diplomas are worth different things to different people. They truly are. Yeah. And if that is the kind of milestone that you feel like you need to cross in order to move on to whatever your next step is, then I'm not mad at that.
Yeah.
Who am I to be mad at anything? And yes, GEDs exist. And sure, they do, but maybe that's not the kind of route that you want to take when this other thing is an option.
Yeah.
It's clearly an option because people are doing it.
It absolutely is still an option. Now, I listen to this conversation, and I see this person's story, and it kind of makes me think, do you hear there's like an almost exact opposite of this story of, like, I think she started teaching when she was like 16, and I saw this person scroll on my page, and she's like, I'm the youngest teacher in the U.S., and she's 17, and she's been on, like, Jennifer Hudson show or something. She was on someone's talk show, and, like, apparently it's legit, and, like, who am I to argue? But, like, this 17-year-old is now, like, teaching 3rd grade, and I'm like, it does, like, I see it, and I'm like, does that sit right with me? I don't know, because she's apparently got her master's. She, like, graduated at, like, 13, and then got through her credit somehow. And yeah, I mean, hey, I'm not her admin. I'm not gonna be like, oh, she shouldn't be doing that, because if someone hired her, they clearly see something in her, and they can put in the structure.
She's of legal working age.
Right.
I mean, she's old enough to work.
Right.
Okay. So I think, and I have not taught elementary school, but I'm going to say this still with a certain degree of confidence. I don't believe in a 3rd grader's ability to know how old their teacher is, and to put that in terms of then how much they should trust that
Yeah.
teacher, right? Because if that teacher is speaking, I'm thinking of elementary school, what I know about my own daughters when they were that age. If that teacher is kind and caring, if that teacher is teaching them skills and doing so in ways that these kids are enjoying and they're retaining them, and then you can gauge that retention on whatever sorts of exams they have to take to show you with bar graphs, like at a meeting. Like if that person's doing that at that age, I've never thought about it, but I'm trying to work my way to an objection, and I do not have one. I don't.
That's what I'm saying too, and it's kind of like, I need to have an honest conversation with myself in thinking about what standards do I hold to that make someone a good, a capable educator, and maybe I'm like projecting it on myself too. It's like I know when I was that age, I couldn't be doing that, but
no.
I mean, is there something in the rule book of life that says you can't do that?
One thing I think of, so I've been on a lot of hiring committees at a number of schools, right, as we're looking for new teachers to our building. And in those interviews, there's really two different paths that I'm taking. If this is a teacher that is coming from little to no experience, fresh out of college, or like maybe has barely had any experience elsewhere, you have to really be gauging on foreseeable potential and success, right? Like, what do they seem like based on their answers, based on the energy that they approach this job with, based on their ability to recognize like potential deficiencies, whatever. But it's all potential. It's right. It's forecasting though.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, well, you change the color of my mood ring. It's forecastable. And then when you have teachers that have that experience, I'm still frankly looking for all of those things, but also what have you done? Right? Like I still want, I don't think you're done learning at any point in this career. So then what have you done? So when we apply that then to a 17-year-old, I at an elementary level, I don't object. At a middle school level, I might. At a high school level, I very much do.
Third graders are easier to teach. I'm just kidding. I know you're.
Are they?
It's like with the.
That's not what. Oh fuck.
It's based on like the group of kids they're working with. I was like, that's why I wanted to teach high school when I graduated college. I knew like I have a baby face. I was like, I'm not gonna be around this. Like, I'm either not gonna be respected, which it could happen. It would be a little bit more work, or like I would be in conversations or things like I'm just a few years older than them. Things would happen. I would get into uncomfortable conversations that I don't want to be a part of. And like there are ways that you can set up boundaries so that none of that ever happens. But when I'm in just graduating college, I don't feel like up the rest of my college career, or the rest of my career by some bold high schooler,
I was student teaching high school seniors and I was 21 years old. I would have graduated. I would have been a senior when those kids were freshmen. We would have gone to school together. And I thought I lied about my age. I lied and said I was old. I said I was 25. And like, oh yeah.
Wait, you lied to save your ass?
Yes, but that's in person. Like, it's way easier to lie to people than on the internet. Like, I don't know people. I don't know people anything. Whatever. But it's and even then, like, I couldn't grow a beard, so I didn't even have that going for me. And like, I had no way. I don't know. That was a trip, but. Yeah, so I don't think if there's a debate there, I'm not interested in having it, but I feel pretty confident that like a 17-year-old teaching high school, the age is too much. At middle school, it would still feel way too close. I think at a certain lower level of elementary, like in terms of grade, not in terms of difficulty, but in terms of grade, like they're just not gonna know that. My daughter idolized the high school students that would come over and work in her classroom, and she would call them Miss Whatever. And I think if I wasn't a high school teacher, I don't think she would even necessarily know that they were high schoolers. So that is a anecdotal piece of evidence that fully supports what I'm saying. So that's good enough.
Yeah, and it's not our job to weigh who is capable and who is incapable. That's ultimately the job of their administration. But if you're publishing that online, it's kind of like, well, you open up the conversation to yourself,
Well, yes. Well, there was that student teacher. Oh God, his name had a blue heart at the end, but I can't think of what his name was. Is that it? Yes.
Yeah.
Benji. And the saga of him, and I caught that at the tail end, and now that account is
We started this podcast like a week too late to talk about that. But yeah, it was bizarre. I started favoring his videos like the moment I saw him because I was like, oh man, this is gonna work out so bad. The way,
Man,
I mean, oh my god, it's like
the C is for catastrophe. That one.
C is for catastrophe.
It
Benji,
wasn't-
what did you do, man?
Oh God! But again, he was so energetic and like, man, you just want that in a building, and like, it just needs a little bit of just, again, maybe this, when we're talking about less tip too, like it just comes from an awareness of audience, whether it's on a screen or whether it's in front of a class or whether you're now trying to combine them both, which is like, man, you haven't made content and you haven't been in the classroom, so now you're making content about being in the classroom. That's I'm not. Oh my God!
And
there's a level. We're being candid. There's a level of experience to being able to present those things in a way that's going to still allow you to pay your rent. Benji, I am rooting for that man.
Yeah, I am too. And it
really
sucks that, I know he felt capable of making those videos, or he didn't feel scared about making those videos because there's so many bad examples of of how to be a educator online and like to demonstrate aspects of the classroom and share it with people. There's so many bad examples, and he's just like, okay, there's this formula that works, and in his mind he's doing a good thing by showing people, hey, this is how your kids are acting, this is how his kids are acting, right? And it's not an uncommon story. People are going to resonate with that and share it for a lot of the good reasons it should be shared. But they're not your kids. You're working. You're
representing not only that school but the institution you go to and the teacher that you are working under. It might be student teaching. That's a way more complex situation than a guy in a classroom talking. Like there's a lot of moving parts that you are speaking for, whether you want to or not.
I think even from a content creation standpoint, just like throwing up like shit posts where you're just like complaining all the time, that's not sustainable, like you're not, it's just like coming after school every day and being like, these kids did blah blah blah, and like, oh my god, they wouldn't, and just like complaining, like, yeah, people are going to resonate, that's going to go viral, right? And then can you make us like that? What kind of story does that tell that gets people interested in, like there's no resolution, there's no plot, to the kind of stories that you're trying to tell. Because I feel like, I don't know, I try to see things in groups of stories, and the way that I present material online.
Okay.
But when you're just becoming a My Life Sucks like account, it's like, what do you really, like, no one's going to follow you for that.
Well, right. And so if your purpose there in making those posts is that they landed, so I'm going to make more, because again, we've talked about this, a good amount of money can be made on this platform. It very much can be. And if that's the thing that earns you the revenue, I'm never going to criticize anybody's bag ever. But I'm going to say that I have loved this job. And I think I have 19 years of students that show up into my comments, and I think that's something that they remember about me. Not I think, they say that. They remember that about me in those places. But since I started posting and telling those stories, I swear that it's almost like those are the things that illuminate themselves in those moments, because I'm excited to then talk about those. And so I swear, I don't want to say I manifested it, but I think it's changed what I look at. It's what I focus on, and what I internalize are all of these great things, because that's the thing that I like to then, after school, turn on my camera and talk about on the internet, because that's how I feel about it. And so I wonder how much the life imitates art in those spaces.
Ooh.
A young version of me relied so heavily on rapport exclusively to make sure that I was successful. That was my definition of success, was that my students were obviously entertained, that they were having fun, that they were saying positive things about me. And none of those things, you'll notice, have a damn thing to do with actually teaching them anything. And that was the boldest exhibition of insecurity that I think I've ever had. I just needed them. You needed to like me. And any moment of criticism, I was like, I was out of my mind. Like that sort of thing just wrecked me. Any of it at all. And then I ultimately, like, what am I going to do? Tell you stories about how cool I was? Like, sure, I can tell a story. I think we've established, like, I'm a pretty good bullshitter, but like, how far does that really get a guy? Eventually, the education's going to have to be there. And that's a thing that I started to get better at, was the teaching side. Mm-hmm. Man, I didn't have to, I don't think that show necessarily needs to be put on. I think the same thing is true on TikTok. You don't need them to be like, see kids these days, to create kids as an out group. So you and your audience are an in group, and then right. So like, we get it, right? We get them. Like, can you imagine being them and doing this kind of dumb thing? You don't have to do that. It's rhetoric. Our final segment that we're really focusing on here has to do with us saying something that I have never said. I've never vocalized this idea out loud. And maybe you have on your end, but I'll go ahead and start with mine because it's at the top. And this feels like a solid transition. I made a post about the way that I structure my classroom. The way that I am able to save time by, for instance, having feedback keys where I've taken my skill standards, I've assigned them numbers. So instead of typing out this feedback, I can just put numbers on things as notes, and then students have that, and that's the feedback. And then we do more work with it. But like, that is a key that I have. Or I have a document where students also aligned to standards, where students take their work and they put screenshots in one space, and then on the other side they reflect, and then they build those and they turn those things in. Mm-hmm. Or the organizational structure I have for my class, I call them day books. They're like agendas, and here's how we operate it every day. And I posted screenshots of those, right? All they are documents. And I made a couple of tables, and if you freeze them, you can see the words on them. You can see what's in the table. It's all there. And the amount of messages, and we're talking like dozens and dozens and dozens. They're like, "Are you selling these? Can I buy these? Can I buy these from you?" And I'm flattered by that. And I'm glad that my idea is something that is resonating. But if we are being candid, these are tables, and you can make them like in a moment. You can make them in a split second.
Put them in ChatGPT. It could be even faster.
You honestly can't. I use ChatGPT to actually create a lot of these rubrics. I take my state standards and say I want them filled over these amount of points, and then make them like bulleted so I can make sure I check them, and that becomes the feedback. 100%. You can do that kind of thing. And I love teachers seeing things and wanting to do them. That is so exciting. I'm one of those teachers too. I get inspired, and then I want to do that. But there's something when a student, for instance, emails you and they are behind, and they say, "What can I do to catch up?" Okay, what has happened in that moment, even though it's sincere, and it is sincere, I'm not saying it's ever not, it is sincere. What that has now done is say, I now don't need to work until a response is given, because the responsibility is on the person that I'm waiting on to answer, right? That responsibility in that moment has been passed. And so then I respond because I'm a teacher, and that's what you're supposed to do with your students. I'm not criticizing that. But when it becomes a teacher, right, that's like, do you sell these things? Well, they work for me because I thought about them. And then I made them, or my colleague made them, right? And there's something that I then implemented in my room, and then I did to my other classes that we don't co-teach. But like, they work because I own them. I made those, and you can have it. I'm not saying I deserve it.
But
it's
just
mine,
implementing it is not going to solve your problem that you're trying to fix.
Right. Yeah. That it's just that like, I don't know. Having a hammer doesn't mean you can build a fence, and it's too much. So that's the thing that I think I want to put out there, is like that act of maybe buying things because it looks like it's a thing that works for someone doesn't immediately translate into what you want to do. And I know teachers I modify them. Okay, well, that's wonderful. That's not what's being asked of me in that moment. And so this isn't a teachers pay teachers thing, but just like right then, that's not what's being asked of me. You just want this so you can use it. Mm-hmm. Dude, it's a 4 by 18 table, and then I just put the standards in. you could make it faster than I could respond to it. It takes no time.
But you should still get your bag.
Lord, there's a teacher. I can't think of her name. I've talked to her too. Damn it. I think her last name's Miller. And she was talking about how she made a video, a pay transparency video. And she was like, so, here's the bills that I have going out. And then my take home from teaching after insurance is like $2,900 or whatever. And then I also have my TPT income, which last month was $16,000. And then you did what? You made how much money? And I messaged her. I was like, okay, hold on. What do we got going on here?
This isn't Miss Miller with the stickers, is it?
I think so. And I think she might be an instructional coach. She's super nice.
Oh,
like just
different people. Maybe.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. But she's super nice. And she was like, yeah, it's been this incredible thing. And, I make a lot of it really goes up around back to school, for instance, or whatever. Like, I don't know how much those are secrets, but like, yeah. And so, but she posted that and it was like, oh my God, like this is a massive stream. I made a teachers pay teachers because people were really, so here's the thing I liked. People were really interested in my reading list for young adult novel.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now that's the thing where like, I have years and years of expertise. I have hundreds and hundreds of titles under my belt. I've taught so many of these. You want a reading list? I just gave it away. Like I'm happy to give that. Yeah. Like that's a different thing. But like for instructional materials, you're the one instructing. Like make it, if you like the idea of a feedback key, you obviously get it. You know what one is. Mm-hmm. But you make the one that fits for what you're doing. What would I do for science? Dude, I don't know.
I don't teach science.
I don't know. That's not where I instruct, but like you do, and you're an expert, so
There's a reason why you're there. Yeah. Yeah,
but I'm telling you that in science this would save you time. So you sort out what that's going to look like and you will save time.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I'm being candid about.
I think it's just like, yeah, you're critical. You want people to evaluate like why they're asking for your materials, because you see it and you're like, there's something disconnecting if you're asking for that kind of instructional material. And you would be better off if you thought about, why am I asking for this as opposed to just doing it yourself for the kids that you need to work with. You know what I got? I think I mainly I just wanted to talk about, like, this has always frustrated me. If we're being candid, I hate teachers who think they're over icebreakers. And I know it's like super like cheesy, but it's like, okay. Like I think you might be talking to me. I am your audience. You talk to me. I mean, I see people complaining about it online, and I'm just like, dude, you're like, how often do you come into your room and you're like, all right, guys, we're gonna do this, fun activity, and everyone's like, oh my god, like this is stupid. Like I don't want to do this. I mean, probably not you because you have buy-in for your classroom, but even still. Like with my 8th graders who are like, I am so over this. It takes a lot of effort to like get them to buy into this, to get them to buy into, hey, we're not doing a freaking packet, yo. We're actually doing something.
You're touching their hearts.
Right. But I think when we have that same attitude approaching icebreakers in our meetings, it's like, come on, just like be a little less serious. Be kind of fun with it, That's, I mean, it's surface level. But I'm just like, if you can't just kind of take a break from it and like unclench your fist and release your jaw and be like, I'm gonna do this silly thing with these people who could be my coworker friends, it frustrates me that we have this negative attitude towards icebreakers, that there's a lot of teacher attitude against it, and it could be something that you're asking for your kids to participate in the same ways. That's mine's short and sweet.
And depending on how big your building is, the amount of teachers in my building, and then there's new ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the amount of teachers in my building that I have never spoken to, that in a space like that, I actually have a chance to engage with them when those things are pushed. Because we go into this meeting, we always sit in kind of the same seats, and so you're always sort of by the same people because that's just where you sat. I sat one day 8 years ago, and now I sit in the same spot. Yeah. And so but the thing is, I've made really kind of good friends with some of the people on my side of these meetings that I don't ever work with, but it's because of that.
Yeah.
So, yes, is what you're saying correct? Yes.
But also,
but also, no, it's not a but also. I think I'm just going to explain what I think the reason to be is like when teachers being told what to do. I'm going to put out there that we might be on the whole, like, teachers might be the most oppositionally defiant group of people.
Oh, for sure.
And so no matter how great the icebreaker is, man, it could have been an email. Oh, okay. Yes, it could have been. And I know you're right. And again, I think we've established myself as an extrovert. I should be better about that. I'm going to take that in. You know what? At the next meeting, I'm going to volunteer.
That's right.
I'm going to do it.
That's
right. I'm going to do it, and I will report back. I will be the first one with my hand up, no matter what it is.
I will too. Even though I'm more introverted.
I'm going to be the change that I look for in the world.
That's right. Okay, Gandhi.
But I think that's fair. I think that's a fair thing to look at.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I know I'm in the minority in that thought, and as someone who wants to go into administration, it's going to be a huge obstacle to get over, and no amount of, gift cards to CC's Pizza is ever going to change people's hearts on that.
And you gotta touch their hearts. I think we've established that. And I want to say I'm in a building that generally has pretty good meetings. Like I think I'm in a place where they're really respectful of my time. For the most part, the professional development strong. There's a lot of teacher-led stuff that I'm into as well. Are there misses? Of course. Yeah. I think those are less frequent than other buildings I've been in, though. I don't feel like I'm being talked at nearly as much. And that's something that I appreciate from an educator standpoint, right? Like my kids wouldn't want to learn like that. I don't necessarily either. But yes, the icebreaker moving from the seat is like, what a demand. This is over.
This is fascism.
I was about to say, this is 1984.
This is 1984.
This is literally 1984. Oh my God. How'd we do on? Okay.
We are so over time.
I
if that's
feel
what
as
you're
though
asking about.
my candid reserves have been burnt out, and maybe the next time we're just gonna the C is gonna be for conserve, and we can just I don't know, listen to the Andre 3000 flute album and just breathe on it.
That'd be so fun. I haven't actually listened to it yet. I know that he came out with that, but I didn't actually listen to it yet.
It would be exactly what you think it is. And I don't know, maybe we should do an emergency urgent episode for tomorrow because the C is for Cardi. Because if Playboy Cardi doesn't drop tomorrow, he's losing a lot of money.
You're a Playboy Cardi fan?
What do I look like? Yeah, of course I am.
I mean, do you want me to tell you what you look like? Do you want me to be candid in this moment? You look like a 40-year-old dude from Colorado. I don't expect you to be a Playboy Cardi fan.
Well, you'd be wrong, because I'm a 40-year-old dude from Seattle who lives in Colorado. Thank you very much.
I guess the backpack rap scene in Seattle, I forgot all about it.
Oh, in 2000s, you want to know about backpack rap? You want to were you there with Aesop Rock and Idea? Were you rocking with them? Were you? Just so many guys that were so offbeat. I ate that shit up. I loved that.
I love that for you. Thanks for listening to the Type C Teachers Podcast. Again, if you guys could hit subscribe, follow, whatever it is you're doing on this platform where you're listening to this or watching it, that would greatly help us out, know that we're doing something right here. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.